treaty obligation. And I always feel like when one half of the entry, especially the one that was likely to take the more money, gets scratched, the other half ends up being a short price. Now, the other half is a half to Tuscan Gold, as the only foal from this dam. And Tuscan Gold, remember, ran third in the Louisiana Derby and is likely pointing for the Preakness, if not the Peter Pan, and a horse we could hear more from. On Into Mischief, whereas Tuscan Gold more of a distance pedigree. I'm gonna stay with this one that stays in, a first-time starter. We'll see what price this is, though. I'm not gonna jump on a first-time starter that's even money or so. We'll see what price the horse ends up. Obviously, the entry was even money a lot because of treaty obligation.
Right, when you have that horse with some experience as well as what seems like a well-meant first-time starter based on pedigree and the extensive works for this one as well, of course, these horses are going to be short prices. And I think that even alone, both of them would have been an extremely short price anyway. So with that compounding factor of the entry, it's likely that you were going to get an even shorter price. But I agree, there are things to like about this horse, of course, for sure, as well as connections, and I don't have any problems with this one, a likely winner in the first, but I just didn't want to take a super short price.
Well, I don't know if it's a likely winner. It's a first-time starter. Why don't you talk about the 5 cage match?
This one actually ran pretty well first time out, finishing second to Magic Express, a horse that came back in what was a decent allowance race at Keeneland and ran a respectable 83 Byron, finishing fourth in that effort. I thought that this one was sort of one that flew under the radar a little bit first time out, being that half to White Abarrio and going off at the price that he was at 7-1. But I liked that effort. It was a fast enough number, and I thought having the experience edge would help this one in here.
Yeah, he ran fine. Now, a couple horses came back, ran. The winner was 3 Beyer points lower. I think another horse two others actually were 6 Beyer points lower, but I don't think it's really that important. And, natural progression. He's obviously the logical horse to beat in this race with the one being scratched. Thought the 2 Light the Way might run a little bit better, cutting back in distance, second off a layoff. Michelle Nevin's horses often need a race off, a little bit of a freshening. So that cutting back and New Gelding Light the Way might be okay in here as well, but we'll see. It feels like those 2 are fairly decent horses, horses that ran. Both of them have some ability. Race number 2, we'll take a look at Army of Thoughts, where Army of Thoughts looked like a winner last time and just couldn't quite sustain it. And Chassis, sort of a non-discriminate third, picking up pieces in here. I mean, there is not a lot of form to go on here, and you have to imagine Army of Thoughts will try to wire this field again.
Right, and I mean, this is a horse that really did all of the dirty work in this race, putting away anybody else that was up close to that pace and was able to sort of kick on in here and switch leads a little bit late, but still seemed like she was going to have enough and just got run down by a horse that was coming from off the pace, that was a much shorter price. And you just have to think from the inside, aren't they going to try to go with this horse again, show that same kind of speed? And I didn't really see anybody that was going to be so much quicker to sort of keep up with this one early on.
I imagine Rosemary Potatoes will try to chase her, but I don't disagree. She's supposed to be the controlling speed in here. My one problem with that race is that there was a very, very heavy favorite in that race. That was a complete and total no-show. And if you take that horse out of the race, everybody's prices go down significantly. It really wasn't much of a field. Now, having said that,
neither is
this isn't exactly much of a field either. On the other hand, you do have a drop down with Ghostly Girl, a horse who has been racing against much better horses. And I just feel as though this drop down is good enough that I would take this horse as the alternative. I don't have a big knock against the one. But the problem with Army of Thoughts is she's now completely and totally exposed. She's a horse that almost won at 16-1 last time, and now she's going to be 1/5 of the price in here. Not the Ghostly Girl's much of a price. There just isn't really anywhere else to go in here, though you've got Keep It Sexy second, who I don't really know how she can be competitive here.
Yeah, I mean, she took a very long time to break her maiden, but if you really isolate those dirt starts where she was in for a tag, that 1 for 13 looks a little bit more like a 1 for 3. I don't mind her cutting back in distance. I know that she ran for purse money only last time, but I feel as though if you wanted to go in some sort of alternative direction, and I just don't love Ghostly Girl with the races that she's run lately, even though she has been facing tougher, that was where I would go for somebody else. But I do think it's between those 3.
Well, Ghostly Girl got kind of a hideous ride last time, to be honest with you, and actually ran a lot better, I think, than her final finish makes it look. Race number 3. You've got 3 horses coming out of a really interesting maiden race, and a race where the winner is actually coming back, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. It's hard for me to, I think it's tomorrow, actually, in a very competitive second race. And I think it's important to watch the star of the race for both the number 3, Tomicon, who's the 4 today, and the 6, Shlomo, because both of these horses, and we'll show the pan, and you'll see a little of it, but you're going to see the 3 steady back significantly, but you're also going to see Shlomo get sort of steadied back in there as well. And I think both of these horses had separate trouble. Tomicon sort of broke slowly more than anything else, whereas there was a chain reaction that really badly knocked Shlomo off stride. And for my money, Shlomo ran an hour and a half the best race of anybody in here. I'm not knocking the race. Silver Satin ran fine, has run fine both of the starts. But Shlomo, after that break, after that trouble, makes a big, long, sustained run, actually makes the lead in mid-stretch. About the 8th pole, this horse is in front by almost a length in here, before understandably getting run down first time at 7 furlongs. The break wasn't Shlomo's fault. It was the fault of somebody else. So there's no reason you're supposed to worry about this horse getting left, and I'm going to be very surprised if Shlomo doesn't run extremely well today.
Yeah, that's the one I want out of this race of the 3 coming out, because at least you saw with him that he overcame some of that trouble that as you said, he didn't necessarily cause. It's not as though he was a horse that had gait issues that came over on him. And at least he was able to sort of regain some sort of position, show that he had some interest in doing some running in that race. And that is the one that I would take out of those 3, because as you said, Silver Satin is a horse that, okay, now the blinkers go on, favored to 2 starts, ran well in both of them.
No,
but
he's okay.
But don't you want somebody who's had a little bit more trouble, maybe more of an excuse?
Well, I
in there?
prefer the 6.
Yeah,
I think they're the 2. I mean, Tomicon's not impossible in here. He was a huge price that day, and he did do a little bit of running, and he'll probably run better. It's just hard to believe he can beat both of those horses. I don't know what you saw about Artful Dreamer, though, that you think he's going to beat all of these horses.
I mean, he's getting him in the New York Breds for the first time, and he did go off at a huge price first time out. He broke very slowly. He did no running. But I feel as though he did at least get a bit of a racing education out of that race, going over towards the inside, taking some kickback. And at least
not a lot of kickback.
There was a little dirt going on.
Not really. He was pretty far behind. Yep, maybe like a little pebble of dirt.
Just
like,
one.
Yeah,
like
from
a fierceness
the
size
7 lengths in front of him, he was at the closest time. He got left 4 lengths in there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He broke so slowly in that race.
He did, but he didn't get any education in there. He did no running. He ran around the track. I mean, I don't know what you think happened to him there that's going to help him move forward.
Facing State Bred Company, and he has quite a bit of pedigree. I mean, if you look at him, he's a half to 2 horses that did well versus the State Breds coming here to New York, and this is not a barn that fires first time out either.
I get it. And I looked at this horse long and hard, and I put him 3rd as the other alternative. But I think the problem is this is not your everyday New York bred maiden race. Silver Satin and Shlomo, Silver Satin's running figures in the mid-70s, and Shlomo, with trouble, ran a 66. Legitimate trouble first time out. So you're talking about New York breds that ran a little bit, and you're kind of asking a horse to improve 15 lengths to be competitive in here. That's probably a stretch, but he will be a bit of a price. We'll see what happens in race number 3. Race number 4, going a mile. I think you run into a situation in this race with the number 6 Winning Connection, and I'm going to go all the way back to November 26th to find one of his races where he was close, where you've got a horse that absolutely towers over this field.
Right.
Having said that, this horse was claimed for $35,000 from Michelle Nevin, and is now running back here almost 2 months later for $14,000. After running an absolutely horrendous race. So, I mean, clearly the feeling is, let's just hope we win. We're dropping enough that he's going to be good enough to beat these horses, get our $15,000 of the purse. We're going to lose about $10,000 between the purse and paying the expenses. And then we've had the horse for 2 months. So we're going to be about, in a perfect situation, we're going to lose about $16,000 on this horse. Man, that is a tough one. And I get it, and he may well win. But the other problem with him, Sarah, is he's got a bit of dog in him. I mean, he's lost, like that race, an awful lot of races he was on paper supposed to win for some very good connections.
Absolutely. I mean, he was seriously disappointing last time. You can't deny that at all. And you have to be concerned about this kind of class drop as well as the time off, like you mentioned. But when you look at who he's been facing in comparison to this field, it's like...
I get it.
Yeah, and I will say, more of an outside flow track on the 29th. He was in the 2-path, then right over to the rail. And then on the 4th, the rail was a significant advantage. He was never over to it. So maybe those last 2 races that were really bad were not quite as bad as
well, no, his last race was horrendous. He was close to the inside, but it wasn't a dead rail. I mean, Grandpa's Kid was on the rail for much of the race, so I don't really...
Outside flow.
Yeah, but you're making an excuse
But I look at
for a
what you've
hideous
written.
effort on a horse that's dropping totally off a cliff. I mean, the winner's share of this race is $15,400. Okay, so they got to pay Ruiz $1,500. So now we're down to 12. We're down to 13.9. Now, I assume Michelle's getting paid as well.
You would hope.
So we're down to about 12.3, we'll put it at $12,300. They get claimed, so they've lost $8,700 in the claim and a similar amount taking care of this horse over the last couple of months. This is a monster drop. I mean,
because a business decision didn't go well, it's not as though I have to look at the rest of this field and be like, okay, who is so much better than him, though?
well, nobody's better than him off his good races. But even when he was good, he didn't win. And to me, he's a favorite that I'm just going to lose to. And I'm actually kind of glad the one scratched, because I thought it was interesting that Jamie Ness had both these horses enter, and I thought maybe he will scratch one because the 1A actually kind of looks like the slower one of the two.
I thought so,
which
too.
I found it sort of interesting, and this is the one dropping. I'm just going to take this horse as the new face and alternative. And I think, this horse is not going to be favored.
That's true.
David made this horse favored because of the other horse, which
Yep.
is understandable.
He would have been preferred.
And Winning Connection is probably
he
the
is.
horse to beat in here, but he's tough to take. Listen, I don't like any of the others either here. I mean, you obviously don't really like the 1A. Union Lights, to me, is just another horse that doesn't want to win either. He's
No,
like a
absolutely
worse
not.
version of winning Connection.
Right, he's been more at this level, so he's not even getting the excuse of facing tougher company over the past couple of races. And I mean, you just don't really trust him to be that winning type in this spot in comparison to the horses that are getting that class relief.
I don't disagree. It's sort of that's race. That's why I kind of prefer the 1A over those runners. But sometimes it's just a horse you haven't gotten sick of. Race number 5, the first turf race of the season, and I think I don't know how many times he's done it, but I imagine Chad Brown probably has a good record of doing well in our first turf race, especially when they're maiden races. And I looked at Grayosh, who thankfully nobody was hurt last time he ran. That was sort of a scary incident through no fault of Tyler's.
Yeah.
Last time out, and I thought his first race was probably going to make him the winner in this race. It was a slow-paced race where he's had a good trip behind them. He actually did manage to gain a little bit of ground behind the slow pace. It was such a funny thing because even though he's scratched, you can look at the 4 Big Beautifuls running line, and they're the 2 divisions of the same race, and they're just dichotomous races where Big Beautiful had the big pace, and this horse had a slow pace. On the other hand, Big Beautiful, the pace held together as well. Hard to really know. I don't know. The rails were the same for the 2 races. I didn't look them up. I know this horse is going to be short. I'm not going to try to beat this horse.
That's completely fair. And I mean, I think you look at the price first time out and sort of say, oh, they didn't really bet this one. But this was the time period where everyone thought that Chad Brown would never win another race
His
at
career
Gulfstream
was
Park.
over in January.
Yes.
I read it on Twitter.
So the big price, I think, had something to do with the circumstances that were going on as well, of everybody sort of thinking, okay, well, now clearly he can't train anymore, which obviously I'm joking.
Well, no,
but-
I don't. I think I know you're sort of joking, but I don't think that's the case at all. I just think that in general, Chad Brown does not have a long record of running his good 3-year-old turf horses in maiden races at Gulfstream. More of them run at Tampa Bay than anywhere else. And over the years, I know Bricks and Mortar did win his debut at Gulfstream. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And in general, he doesn't run his better horses down there in maiden races and doesn't have a particularly good record of success. So I think that's a lot to do with it. Having said that, this horse ran well in there. And to me, I'm scared that maybe the 2 could wire the field. And Chantilly Road, who does have some turf pedigree if you go back. It's more of a dirt family, but there's plenty of turf. It's actually going back to the family of Search Party, a Stuart Janney Phipps type family. There is turf in there, so maybe that horse will improve as a guess. I don't know about Just One More. I know the horse has pedigree, but you're asking the English Channel to win first time at miles 16th. Good luck.
Right, and I will say, at least with the Dam Side production, the full siblings are the ones that have been the successful ones going on the turf. Voodoo Song, as well as Worth a Shot, a 4-time winner as well. Voodoo Song obviously being the more high profile of those 2, but I like these horses that have had the same kind of connections, that have been back to the same sort of pedigree. Like, they understand that this is a combination that has been able to provide them with a horse that's not that bad. And so I just wanted somebody outside of what was going to be a very short price favorite. I thought this one was a little bit interesting, but it's a guess.
It is a guess with a first-time starter. We'll see what happens. That's the first 5, the late pick 4 after a quick break.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horse, presented by our good friends at Saratoga Spring Water. I want to thank them for their support. So race number 6. Let's start by talking about Clubhouse, who I imagine is, in fact, the morning line favorite in here, and we'll show the last race. And we got a little feel from this race, which the figure is too high and
Yes.
should be lowered by the performance yesterday of Messi the Magician. And I know a couple of horses have come back and run to the number. Having said that, one of them was a second off a layoff, stretch out for Linda Rice, that probably rated to run 6 to 10 points higher. And the other one's kind of a random horse that did run the same figure, but had been running much lower figures, and I just don't trust this number. Now, having said that, even if Clubhouse returns to his 80-type buyers, he can absolutely win this race. So he is the horse to beat, even if you're a little bit sort of circumspect of that race. I just thought there were more interesting horses in the race, and you've taken one of them on top in the 5 upside potential.
Right, and a horse that, I mean, there is potential for this one to possibly improve going first off the claim before Linda Rice in here. Maybe you have to be a little bit concerned that he debuted for well-meant connections in for a tag after costing the $90,000, but he ran well. I mean, I thought that he got a decent enough number first time out. That's 72. I thought that he would have some forward position in this race coming in. I like that Manny Franco stays aboard, who was on him for that win, even at that, although he switches connections. And going back to a horse like Clubhouse and Independent Paul, those were both career bests for them, but they weren't such outliers like they were for Messi the Magician. However, we saw Messi the Magician come back yesterday and regress significantly back to sort of who he used to be.
As we said, right. Yeah, with upside potential, I don't know. We'll see. It's hard for me to see Linda improving this horse off his debut. I had the horse third. I figured I'd wanted kind of whichever horse Linda decided to run, because you know with Linda, she can't possibly run 2. She's going to feel the race out and take out the one she doesn't want to run, whatever she may tell me. I preferred Leonid's the 2, but she obviously prefers upside potential. I think Pineapple Man is a horse that needs to be discussed. I know he was claimed last time for Mike Maker, but he ran pretty well last time, and this was a very, very strong 25,000 non-winners at 2 lifetime. And I think even though it's a starter allowance, from a condition standpoint, that's the thing that upside potential is giving up.
Right.
Upside potential could be in a non-winners at 2 lifetime. Linda decided, I guess she didn't want to lose the horse, which is fine, to run in here. But I still think it presents sort of a race where you've got multiple winners in here, except for Independent Paul. Pineapple Man is pretty good. He's got some good back figures, and I don't want to just dismiss this horse because he's changing barns.
No, and I mean, I think you look at the race where he was coming in second off the layoff and dropping in for a tag after being sort of walked off in that race where he came back off the layoff, but that's a number that was comparable to what he was running in the past, even though it was against lesser competition, at least on paper. So I think that he's worth maybe fooling around with somewhere later on in your exotics, but I couldn't quite get there, putting him further up.
I like 19 Oysters. It's fairly obvious why you would like 19 Oysters. I mean, first of all, this horse in his debut, he ran a figure that would probably win this race. This is a horse that's claimed away from Chad Summers, and we've seen over the years horses claimed from Chad Summers, while not recently, mostly for Ray Handel, improve immeasurably off the claim. This horse was not only claimed by Rob Atras, who's on a tremendous run, but also this JKX Racing, and whoever they are, they seem to win a lot of races, and they seem to be pretty shrewd. And it's interesting they claimed this horse because I believe in the past they had given a horse to Chad Summers off the claim. He had a big price winner here a year plus ago off the claim for these connections. So it's kind of interesting they claimed this horse, and the connections and Atras claiming away from Chad Summers. I'm all in on 19 Oysters in this race. I can't resist him.
Yeah, I mean, he has races that certainly make him
Well,
viable.
he has one. If he can improve off the claim, and I'm going to guess that he will, and if he doesn't, I'll lose. Race number 7. This is the return of Chad Brown horses.
Yes.
That sort of disappointed, but at times have run very well. And it's funny with Blazing Sevens, and we'll show him running second in the Preakness. I've always felt that this was a horse. I know he ran second in the Preakness, but I don't think that the National Treasure that beat him in here is the National Treasure we've been seeing in recent efforts, who's gotten much better. I always felt this horse might be better around one turn. I've had this conversation many times with Chad Brown. And getting back to a mile, he's been training well heading into it. I just think he might be better than these horses, Sarah, and you seem to agree.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've always sort of questioned Arturius a little bit more than I've questioned Blazing Sevens. I know that he's run fast numbers in the past, but I was a little more suspicious of his overall ability other than Blazing Sevens, and his Preakness was a really solid game effort against a loose on the lead horse who, as you've said, now we've seen take those steps forward and become one of the leading horses in the
I don't think
Ultimate
that
Division.
means that this horse is going to improve just because National Treasure has, though. I think the
No,
feeling
I don't
has
think you
to
can
be.
correlate those,
No.
but at the same time, he was already pretty good.
Yeah, no, he's going to be a heavy favorite in here in all likelihood, and I think I'm not going to try to beat him.
Yeah.
I do respect Arturius, though. You know, maybe he's a horse that'll be better with the mile as well, and even when, you know, disappointing or not, the Salvatore Mile. He did lose to Petulante and Trademark in there, and even Nimitz Class. He lost to Bright Future last time, who came out of that race and won the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and is not exactly a bum. You know, he ran the Perryville against Goodnight. He buried the field in the Curlin. Now, he has some issues, and it's hard to know, coming back as a five-year-old now, how effective he's going to be, but I won't be surprised if he is pretty effective in here.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I think if you think it's not one of these two, everybody else is kind of looking similar.
Yeah, I mean, we'll show Power Seeker finishing second last time out with Synthesis running, and you have Power Seeker second, I have him third. I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a horse that you could say was a little bit more against the racetrack because this was a day where Speed was doing extremely well, and Synthesis was a horse that was aggressively handled, went right to the front here, and Power Seeker is kind of spinning his wheels a little bit, as you can see, and I thought as though he still earned a high enough number. I liked that he handled the stretch back out in distance for this barn after what was a race that was, two of them likely too short for him. And I thought that maybe he had that little bit of an excuse being slightly against a racetrack that favored some speed.
Yeah, I think originally a lot of us thought it was an inside track. And I think as the day went on, it wasn't inside, it was forwardly placed horses. And he probably made the single best close of the day in that race, running second. I don't disagree. And I do think that he's a horse. And, you know, if you want to use a horse that has some recency, I think you want to back up with him as opposed to some of the others. Not that the others don't have some merit. Race number 8 is the Danger's Hour. Danger's Hour, one of the many running sons or daughters of Glowing Tribute. It's amazing how many horses she produced. I mean, Sea Hero being the most famous, but Hero's Honor and Danger's Hour and Glowing Honor and Wild Applause and Coronation Cup. She's one of the all-time great broodmares. She won the Diana back in the mid-'70s, actually. Probably was Elliot Birch back then. It's probably before Mac Miller took over Rokeby. But I always loved seeing these races named for those Rokeby runners that I was very fond of. And Chad Brown has quite a few runners in this race, including Spirit of St. Louis, who I don't have any argument. He's the horse to beat in this race. I don't think he's going to get the same forward position he's gotten in recent races, but I'm not sure that's really supposed to matter.
No, he doesn't need it. He's shown that he's that tactical type of horse that could sort of adapt to whatever situation may be occurring. And you and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. Even his dirt races were pretty good,
I'd like to
too.
convince Chad Brown to try this horse in the dirt again. I'll never win that fight, so I think I'm going to have it for about 18 seconds, if that.
Yeah.
But
I'll jump in on your boat with that.
Well, I feel as though if he's in one of these races and it rains off, they should stay in.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, I mean, this horse is running against real horses. He beat Olympic Dreams first time out. He lost to him second time. These are mid-90 buyer horses. I'm not sure he couldn't be very competitive in dirt or turf stakes for New York breds. And he's a very logical horse in here. We both have him second.
Yep.
You, on the other hand, have Mason on top. And I want to show the first quarter mile of his last race as well as the last quarter mile, and I'll let you talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell in this race very early on that a decision was made that he did not agree with. This is a horse that likes to have that forward position. He tried to go for it. He was reined back.
He was forward.
He was reined back, but then he gets cut off, and then you can see his head come up. He has to shift out a little bit. You could just tell throughout the running of this race that he was never really comfortable with where he was sitting. He throws his head up. He's resenting being held like that. And I thought he just sort of ran evenly around the racetrack in what was his return race off a little bit of a layoff, and just thought that he could do better now coming in here, drawing the rail, that he would be allowed to go forward a little bit more. I don't necessarily see him on the lead with horses like Bring Me a Check as well as even Heaven Street, but I thought that he would be sort of allowed to get that forward position instead of having a fight on his hands.
Yeah, I disagree with you completely.
Okay.
I think he's a complete phony. I don't even think he was any good when we thought he was good when he first came over here. I think because he was a Juddmonte horse and he went to Chad Brown and he ran so well in his first race here on the Maker's Mark that suddenly many of us got delusions of grandeur with this horse, as they would say in Saturday Night Fever. And then he came on and he won just a phony race, the Seek Again, where he was 25 cents the dollar. And then he got a very soft trip and he didn't run even actually Public Sector, who's okay at best.
Yeah,
probably
average.
ran a better race than him in the poker, and it's really not been a lot of glory since then, to be honest with you. I thought he was awful in this race. I agree, he got a little rank on Flavia and trying to rate him. I don't disagree with you. On the other hand, he still worked out a perfect trip. He angled out top of the stretch, and he stunk.
Yeah, he had
This
nothing.
is a fourth place finish, beating a length and a quarter, that looks on paper a lot better than it was. To me, he had every chance to win. He never made the lead, and I just think his day is come and gone.
Yeah, that's fair.
We will agree to disagree, which is fine. I do not like this horse at all.
Yeah.
If Mason wins this race, if Mason hits the board in this race, I'll be surprised.
Look, and I agree with you. I kind of thought he was a bit phony when he first came over and was just taking a significant amount of money based on connections. And while he was running okay, he was also really dressed up in a lot of those performances. But I think over his last 3 starts, when we haven't really seen what he's been able to do since 2022, you can make some excuses for them. He doesn't want to
What?
sprint.
He was awful in the Artie Schiller. He was cruising in front. Exact Estimate had a trip in there. He lost to Big Everett, who actually for one, we got a perfect trip, but not his desired perfect trip. We'll agree. It's fine. It's handicapping. We can agree to disagree. Let's take a look at Pioneering Spirit beating Bring Me a Check in the Bernard Baruch. And I think the question with Pioneering Spirit is, you know, overall, except for the 100 buyer he got in this race, he's not as fast as some others in here. And the other question with Pioneering Spirit is, why I have great respect for it, is a cool horse. Can he catch lightning in a bottle again the way he did in Saratoga last year? And if he does, can we reasonably expect him to do it from the get-go in his first start in 2024?
Right, and he is a horse that, yes, when he was switched over to the turf, he was able to win that start. This is his first victory dropping in class and had this nice run of races where he was gradually stepping up to the occasion well. And I think that when you look at the Turf Classic, that was a bog. He doesn't want to go that far either. And when you look at the Artie Schiller...
Well, I think he does want to go that far,
You do?
actually. I don't know. He didn't run that badly in a mile and 3 ace. He won at Saratoga. I mean, he's just running against better horses. I think the bog is right. I just think better horses.
Yeah,
The bog is probably the reason.
Do you worry about the pace setup he's going to get at all, or lack thereof, or do you think that it doesn't really matter for him?
I don't see a lack of pace in here. I think the 1's going to go, the 4 can go, the 7 can, the 8 can go in here. I think this is going to be an honestly run race. I just not certain he's quite good enough. And like you, I have him as a player in here on the bottom, sort of along with Dakota Gold, who had completely lost his form at the end of last year, but he comes back as a gelding, and to deny that there was a time that he could be competitive in here would be foolish.
Right.
So
He has races.
I don't trust him, but he's got races. I like Equitize. You know, one of the things what I like about this horse, I remember bunch God, now it's going back like 6 or 7 years. I got enamored with a horse that I never really quite got, but Bill Mott kept entering him in grade 1s and major races, and he would ship him to different places around the country. And I remember thinking, I don't know what Bill Mott sees in this. I don't see in this horse what Bill Mott sees, but if Bill Mott is entering this horse in grade 2s and grade 1s off his form, he's too smart to be that wrong. And that horse was Channel Maker. And if Jose Ortiz had decided to actually get Channel Maker in the race, he might have won the Manhattan that year, but he ended up winning stakes up in Saratoga that summer, and obviously Channel Maker. And I'm not saying Equitize is Channel Maker, but
No,
I'm
of
saying
course not.
the lesson is when a good trainer is entering a horse that seems to be somewhat overmatched, I think sometimes you have to take notice. And this horse, Equitize, which many people may or may not know, was entered in the grade 1 Maker's Mark last Friday at Keeneland. And he scratched out to run here, and it just says to me, think about this. This horse won a maiden race at Tampa, didn't come back for 8 months, and Chad Brown ran him in the Hill Prince. Now, I know he didn't run well, but he still ran him in the Hill Prince, and that race basically fell apart. And then last time...
There were good horses in there as well.
He beat bad horses last time, but he drowned them. Is he going to have to get better to win? Absolutely. But this is one of these times where I'm just going to say Chad Brown is showing a lot of confidence in this horse, and if he's confident to run him in here, I could have some confidence in betting him, but he will have to improve. But
He
you should
just needs to
paid
get
if he
faster,
wins.
but there is room for that improvement.
Race number 9, unfortunately, it's our first. We have our first turf race, and we have our first off the turf race today. You have gone with a stone's throw away.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a dirt pedigree, a horse that's switching over to Mike Maker. I thought that this was a lot to pay for a bust and stone, $75,000, half to a dirt winner, an Ultimate Badger. First off the trainer switch, turf to dirt.
Jordan's got a lot of money, so he's made all that money with sound money.
Well, it's a lot to pay for a bust and stones who only stands for, what is it, $2,500?
I don't know what he sold for this horse originally, and he bought him after his first start, and he ran second time. And I understand about the turf, but they've only run this horse in the turf. Both Jordan ran him on the turf with Todd, and it's not like Mike entered him on the dirt. I think, to me, the reason to use this horse, honestly, is that Mike Maker has a great history in these off-the-turf races. When he leaves horses in, you're kind of wondering, would he or would he not? They seem to do well. On the other hand, he's also coming off an 8-month layoff. So maybe the feeling that he and Jordan have is, let's just give him a run in the dirt. Maybe it opens up a new avenue for him, though he's probably not very good. But he doesn't need to be very good to win this race.
No, absolutely not.
And at the very worst, it gives him a better than like a couple of workouts by running him in the race.
Sure, and I think you can also look at the bullet work coming in as well and know that this is a horse that can at least handle the dirt in the morning.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think about that. I mean, there's plenty of horses that are turf horses that work well okay on the dirt in the morning and can't run in the afternoon. I mean,
there's a lot of turf horses that don't work well on the dirt at all.
But there are a lot of turf horses that handle just fine and work out on it in the mornings. I'm not going to get caught up in that.
Okay.
And remember something. You say that. They waited for a turf race with this horse. They could have found a dirt race to run this horse in. So they wanted to run this horse in the turf. Doesn't mean he's not going to win today, but it's not like they saw that work and said,
oh,
wow,
we have to switch. Sure,
this horse needs to run in the dirt.
That's fair.
I'm going to take Concharity. If Concharity is fast enough to be in front of this field on the turf, as the time form pace projector suggested, I think she'll be fast enough to be in front of him on the dirt. And the first race she ran, that 63 Beyer and the 89 time form US rating, with any routine improvement, that makes this horse enormously tough to beat in this race. Now, obviously, things fell apart, but he came back and he ran in a stake the next time and chased and got nothing. Then he came back and he was involved in the pace that kind of collapsed. I'm going to give him another chance for Joe Sharp. He's going to be in front of these. He gets Lasix. And the thing is, to a lesser extent, Busha and Scarlett's Dream, these are the dirt horses in this race.
Absolutely.
So I do want to have the dirt horses in there. I hear you with the 5. I think they're dangerous. I wonder what we're going to get from the horse that you have second.
Yeah, I almost put this one on top, and then I was like, I just don't love seeing the regressions, but facing
better horses.
Right, and also I think you can say this horse didn't want to go that far in her second start in the mile. She ran very poorly against a horse that's pretty good in my main squeeze, and then against better horses last time too, even on the cutback. So
there's also an argument the rail was getting a little better late in that card, and she was a bit wide. So I agree with you. I think she's damn. She's getting such significant.
I thought about putting her on top.
Such a drop in cup. Yeah. Listen, I won't be surprised if Beast Cruiser runs well.
Sure.
It's not like the horse ran so badly first time in the dirt.
Not
and
at all.
Gustav leaves this one in. I could see this horse doing well.
Just will be overbet based on the turf race.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody save the 12 in here that's impossible to make. I know we'd much rather it was a turf race. It was a much more interesting race.
Yeah.
But I don't think that. I'll tell you what about this race. There's no absolute.
No.
The horse to beat might be Scarlett's Dream. And she's a pretty dubious horse to beat in here. So I don't really have any problem with any of the other horses.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have a little bit of a tough time making Lady of Thornton, who's clearly a better turf
forgot she was in
horse.
there,
But
yeah.
I mean, still, I mean, everybody else you could say, okay.
I don't like Lady Thornton either.
Oh, you sure?
Thornton.
Thornton.
I don't know what Thornton is. We are done. You guys are just getting started, as is our man, Chris Griffin. Saturday's always a big day for Chris in every possible way. Head on over to Naira Bets. Use the promo code Derby25 and we'll match the $200 your initial deposit and give you a free $25 bet for the Kentucky Derby, which will be drawn 1 week from today and run 2 weeks. And I kind of want to thank Churchill for drawing it a week out.
Yeah, that's great.
And we have track stats. Check out track stats when you head over to Naira Bets as well. We also have, let's see if we got the right slate now. No, we have the middle pick four. Races 2, 3, and 6 for the pick 4s today. $2,500 hit and split on the late pick 5 today. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have a cross-country pick 5. 2 races from Keeneland, 2 from Oaklawn, sandwiched around our Dangers Hour, and 1 to 7:30, as Sarah has informed me, on
It's on my schedule.
FS2. Yes, it is. Fortunately, it's not on mine. I actually have to pay attention more today. It's kind of depressing.
I know.
We're done. You're getting started. Have a great day. Chris Griffin will be up in a few moments.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.